so since you both talked about culture, Filipino culture, you know, back home, and bringing that up, how are you going to also address, like, you know, the modern, like the second and third generation types of Filipino culture, and how are you going to integrate that into, or like balancing the traditional Filipino, the Filipino American, and all other modified cultures? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Didn't you rephrase?
Yes, please.
Okay, how are you going to deal with other, like, different perspectives of Filipino culture? And how are you going to integrate those into FASA?
I mentioned before that Filipino Night would be like a variety show. Not only am I integrating like the modern Filipino by having like dance off or sing off, I'm also promoting like history with the use of games to see people know a lot, or because of these games they get to learn a little bit more about their history. And yeah, during meetings I think doing like incorporating that as well, that same balance would be a good idea.
Integrating these different kinds of modifications, as you say, of the Filipino culture. I actually hadn't thought about that, but I would be willing to get back to you on that if you'd like.
That's fine. Because I'm just saying, because there's the difference between, you know, being from the Philippines and having that culture and being in America. There's a complete difference. You know, how are you guys going to make people feel pride in that when they come from two different walks of life, two different backgrounds, two different histories? I guess that's what I'm really getting at. I'm so sorry that's super late. If you want to answer that now.
I think the best answer I could come up with at this moment is the fact that due to these different backgrounds, whether they come from the Philippines or born in America, that we all kind of have something in common, and that's being Filipino, and we all have that same heritage.
So if you may or may not know, we have a cultural exhibit in October, and the last couple of years we've been having trouble getting a venue for it. And a lot of the planning for it goes on in the summer. So how would you work on finding a place for it logistically? How would you get the exhibit up, and what would you focus on?
For the exhibit, I was thinking of having workshops and guest speakers come in, and the venue would be like a room like this, because ECC is like a resource that we have here at UW. And so I would like guest speakers such as people from Anakbayan and Funds, Tagalog class and the AES class, or other organizations, so that we can promote, they can promote their cause, and then the youth can be more active in our community by learning about it.
Go ahead, Mikko.
It's okay.
Sorry, could you repeat the?
So in October, because October is Filipino American National History Month, we try to have an exhibit showcasing different things every year. This year we tried to put in Odegaard, but we got denied, and that happened I think last year too. So what would you focus on, and then like where would you put it, or how would you deal with the logistics?
I think the best way to do that is to collaborate with other officers of FASA, and also to. So I think it's just all about collaboration, I think.
Done Dennis, go first.
So a lot of members aren't Filipino, and some people may be hesitant in this process because they're not Filipino. So what would you say to this person, or how would you present the Filipino American culture in a way that you're Filipino?
I would go up to them and tell them, hey, I think you're Filipino, like without even knowing what they look like, because our culture is, we were visited by so many like people, even with just colonization, that we do share a lot of like the culture with other races, and I think it's safe to say that they can relate to something with FASA by just like, just talking to us and sharing their experience, because it might be the same thing.
Just took the words right out of my mouth. Um, what was that? Yeah, I think because what I notice about COSA is it's just such an inclusive organization that to instill that, because our theme of this year is being community, it doesn't have to exactly pertain to just Filipinos. And I think if we kind of get that point across that we're all about being inclusive, that should be the most appealing to them.
So you guys talked about a lot of things about what you're gonna do next year and what culture. What I really didn't get was, what's your definition of culture? And why is it important to FASA?
Culture to me is more than just it's more than just the history and the heritage, but it's also the practices that that the Filipino community or the Filipino heritage is, and it's very important for FASA because did you want to build upon that?
What culture is to be specifically Filipino culture, because that's what I have, is that if you see something, you smell something, you taste something, and you hear something, and you think, oh, that's Filipino. That to me is what culture is. And it is important to FASA because we as Filipinos wouldn't come together without these similarities. And I think it'll be harder, and to know that other people are just like you will make you motivated to become part of this group.
Any other questions? One more.
So as cultural chair, one of your biggest, I think the biggest event you do is Filipino Night. How would you go about planning your process, because that takes months and months and months to plan? How can you avoid waiting to last minute to plan things?
I'm just kind of speaking of experience here. I've worked on a lot of live productions and live musicals, plays, being a performer in them, and I understand the time that it requires to put such a huge event together. going from casting actors, auditioning performers for the event. The best way I could answer that right now is just kind of get, to put it simply, get started as early as I can. And by early, I would mean maybe work a little bit over the summer, maybe collab with the other future FASA officers.
What I would do is talk to the alumni, other cultural chair alumni, and see if they can help me brainstorm more and build up on what I already planned. And then during the meetings, I would like the president to give us like at least 2 minutes to just start discussing it. So every meeting we'll start building it up, so that little by little we'll work on it. And if there's anything that comes up, we catch it early.
Okay. It's one important question. It's not alright. It's for Mikko though. I like you. I go to UW Bothell, and I want to know how you plan to travel back and forth 3 to 5 times a week during the academic year from Seattle to Bothell to Marysville.
I think the joys of being a college student is that you get to create your own schedule, which is really nice. And I'll just do my best to make my schedule work around FASA, so I don't get overwhelmed with schoolwork, commuting, and worrying about gas money and stuff like that. Just clearing off my week instead of stacking up my classes like every day to kind of sparse them out.
That concludes our